there are all sorts of presidents in the world who are not white.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, Paul, I was going to ask
Sorry,
you, I'll
Paul.
give you the opportunity to comment, and feel free to interject at any time. Do you think, in your lifetime, that we'll see a black Prime Minister?
I think we will, but I sincerely hope it's not on this analysis. I hope we will see a black or any minority ethnic Prime Minister, Jewish or Chinese or whatever, simply on their abilities and calibre. And I find this, maybe it's because of my cultural background's different, but I do find it quite this focus, like when Lewis Hamilton won the Grand Prix. I mean, he was the first black man, he's gone into this sport and he's conquered it, but he happens to be the fastest driver in the world. He happens to be the best driver in the world.
To be the first driver, it was a struggle to get Lewis Hamilton into it in the first place. Let me remind you, the struggle we've had is the Aryan myth of white superiority that believe we can't do it. I know that family, and I can assure you, the struggle to get him and what he's going through now is amazing.
Can I
Yes,
say
please.
that? I think that what we cannot deny is we're not actually always on a level playing field. And you know, what I mean by that
Even
is...
in the 21st century?
Even in the 21st century, let's accept that. There was an understudy by the Commission for Racial Equalities, and they said, you know, in certain quarters, even in public life, that a black man with the same qualifications of a white man needs to work 10 times harder to achieve the same rank as that white person. These are researchers that have already gone through there. So, you know, we can't deny that, you know, why do we have underachievement of black young kids? Why, you know, look at the stats. There is something about color, and we can't deny that reality. I understand what you're saying, Paul, but I think we've got to accept that it is for us as black people an important thing that we've got a Hamilton. It's an important thing that we've got, I'm coming, that we've got a Baroness Scotland, who is the first black Attorney General in the, it is what it says, it inspires other young people to say, well, you know what, even though the system might sometimes be against us, we can fight the system and believe that we can make it. That's why the dream of Martin Luther King means a lot, not just to black people, but I would say to anybody who feels disadvantaged, prejudiced about, or discouraged about their position. So I accept that it's not just a color thing, but let's not ignore color in the bid to be politically correct.
Now, would you then agree with affirmative action, as some have said, that I know Robert Beckford, Dr. Robert Beckford, the theologian, has suggested that Obama only got where he got because of affirmative action in the educational system and so forth in the United States. One, do you believe that? And two, if you do believe that, do you believe we should have it here in the UK?
There's a context about, there's a discussion about affirmative action even around policing. You know, so we have that in police and politics, education, etc. Whether it would be accepted by within Britain is a totally different ballgame. The history of the United States and the history of the United Kingdom are totally different. The experience of the black community and, you know, the communities at large are totally different. I don't think that we desperately need to go towards affirmative action, but I think there's something about respecting humanity and trying to teach people the values in relation to how you engage with people from other cultures other than yours. Now, if affirmative action becomes the only way out, it does say that it is, I would say it's disappointing that that had to be the position Great Britain had to come to in order for people to get a step up the ladder. But if that's the only way, I think we should still continue to have the dialogue. We should continue to have, explore ways and means and come to something that works for us in the United Kingdom without totally trying to emulate everything that goes on in the US.
Baroness Howse, you're in the House of Lords. You've broken through the glass ceiling.
Yes.
Now, was that affirmative action, or can you say that it was because of the character and the work that you've done?
I have no idea why I was invited to take a seat in the House of Lords. I worked, and I suppose I came to the notice of politicians. But I'd like to go back to the American situation. When people say about affirmative action in Britain, we never had legalized, I use the term legalized apartheid.
Right.
You see, when you have something like that, black people were being educated along one stream and white people. So when the ending of apartheid meant that they had to take affirmative action to bring people in. We have a different form of discrimination in this country. One that when the Stephen Lawrence report came out, the police were accused of institutional racism. Individuals were not. It was institutional. It is institutionalized in such a way that it's very difficult, A, to identify, and B, to combat. And I think it's very useful for us to see the difference, as in South Africa, where it was legalized. You know.
So, Paul Diamond, you're a barrister, a lawyer. Should the law then have a place to play within the British context, given that our context is different from the American context?
What do you mean, the law?
In terms of, as Baroness Howes correctly points out, you had legalized segregation. It was against the law, or the law permitted certain acts of discrimination in the busing system, in the schooling system, and so forth. Therefore, the pendulum, as I understand your argument, needed to be physically swung the other way by legal means to correct the balance. But we've not had that within the UK. But we are seeing an undercurrent, something much more innocuous in a way, undercurrent of racism in some areas, it's been alleged. Do you think the law has a place with equality laws, or is this something that we work out in just society, just rubbing against each other?
It's actually a very difficult question. I think the law's overblown. The law is a political mechanism, and unfortunately it's been reduced in the last, I believe, last 10 years to politics in another venue before a judge. And lawyers and judges are human beings and products of their society. And in fact, in the United States, it was the Supreme Court triggered the Civil War, many people think, in the United States, when they gave a ruling that a slave had to be returned, and it was a property right, and that triggered the political emancipation movements. And also these decisions, separate but equal, were Supreme Court decisions in the United States. So it's a political tool. I think what concerns me, I think, I'm afraid I'm going to be quick, but I think there is a minority disadvantaged industry in Britain in which the race industry can become part of it. And we see it all the time. I mean, there's a number of things I think that have alarmed Christians, particularly on this agenda. And that has been, in fact, the sexual minorities agenda. That I think that's become very, pressing to Christians, this sort of preferment and rights to one group over another group, almost in the abstract, regardless of context and morality. And the other thing I think a lot of Christians feel is a preferment to Islam as well at the moment. And I think my preference is, and I think I totally agree with what was said earlier, that we, all humane people want a decent, balanced society. And people don't want disadvantage, and it may well be that certain groups have to work harder to get to a certain position. It may well be that those situations have to be reversed. It may be that you can't fully deal with some of these situations without totally reversing the whole structures, and so it has to be slightly incremental. But I think we have to be very, very cautious about, I feel cautious about these sort of social engineering questions.
Well, Paul, you worked on some of the most famous Christian rights cases in British history, going back to trying to preserve Sunday, and most recently, I think the silver ring thing, and also the BA case, where the lady had a question of whether she could wear her cross. Are you finding that these tensions, whether it be racial tensions or religious tensions, are finding their way in front of the judges in the courts more than they did, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, clearly they are. I mean, the trouble is, when you pursue these agendas, and they are being pursued with great vigour, you are politicising the courts. And so, as I said, the courts now, some of the judges, their comments on whether the war's a just war in Iraq, or whether this matter should take place, or whether you can wear a bangle but not a cross, but you can wear this. These are clearly political decisions which too much power has been given to the courts, and it's become politics in